Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the third session. Sorry I directed you the wrong way. It's actually the third. This is the third session of the 21st Annual Imhotep Student Research Conference. Again, I'm Helen Rodriguez, and I will be the moderator for this session. First, let me introduce the judges. We already know Dr. Robertson. He will be judge number 1. There's also Dr. Hale, Associate Professor in the Department of Social Work at Florida A&M. And the third judge will be Dr. Faison. Hopefully I pronounced your name right.
Is that right?
Associate Professor of Philosophy at Florida A&M as well. I will now introduce the student presenters. Each presenter will have 20 minutes for their presentation, and then 5 minutes for questions and answers. I will hold up a sheet to let the presenter know when she or he has 5 minutes left. The first presenter is Maritza Soto, an undergrad majoring in psychology and minoring in social work. The second presenter will be Andrea Parker, a community psychology graduate student from Florida A&M. Please join us tomorrow for the fourth session, beginning at 11 a.m. Thank you very much. Maritza?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
I am Maritza Soto, a fourth-year graduating senior in the psychology department with a minor in social work, and today we'll be talking about domestic violence in the Dominican Republic. Although my title says Violence Against Latina Women, a different cultural perspective, this comes from exploring research when I was in the Dominican Republic last semester. I took the advantage of going to the FAMU International Office, and I was granted the opportunity to study abroad. So the research that I was doing there was not too focused, but I got some answers, I got some things that I was curious about and just wanted to share with you guys. So if you don't mind, I won't be using a mic. If you don't hear me, please let me know and I'll take the mic up for you. So again, violence against Latina women, a different cultural perspective. So just to give you some visual, this is the Dominican Republic, as you can see. It's about how long? It's a couple of miles away, but not too far from Florida. And I was on this side, on the west side, on the east side, excuse me. So a couple of definitions. The way I defined domestic violence in my study was a common form of aggression. Femicide is the act of killing a woman by a domestic partner or a member of a criminal enterprise. So a couple of introduction. The Dominican Republic is one of the top 10 countries in the region that experiences high volume of femicide every year. In 2011, 233 women were killed in the country, while the comprehensive units received about 67,000 reports related to gender-based violence, sexual, or even domestic violence. By October of 2012, that was the semester I was there, it was a cumulative 163 femicides in the country was reported, which was significantly lower than the previous year, which was 204 women during the same time, October of 2011. 75 of them were from their current or former partner, and 88 were from outside intimate partner relationships. The latest report from the national district, shows the complaints over a span of 2 years has totaled over 15,000, which is 23 were total offenses, and 46% was a result of domestic violence. So there is a law that was established in 1997, which, if you ask me, that was yesterday, that was there to protect women and their family from any form of domestic violence. So that means that before that time, there was no such thing as a law to protect the women from this kind of aggression. Therefore, many were aware of these laws against domestic violence. Therefore, crimes continue to be unnoticed and unreported, including murders and acts of violence. So I'm going to go a little back and introduce you why these three women here are important as a part of my study, as a part of why I went to the Dominican Republic. Patria, Minerva, and Maria Teresa. So there was a movement that these three women started. They heard that Trujillo, which is one of the guys that was a dictator there at the time, that was governing, he was being very cruel when he got into that leadership, and basically wasn't doing well for the country. He wasn't doing it for their well, but basically to take over. So these three women, along with some classmates, got together and were talking about the situation, and they were tired of it. So they wanted to do something different. So, under pressure from the Catholic Church, on November of 1960 marked the day the sisters' lives were cut short because of their convictions. What does this mean? Well, unfortunately, when these women were meeting in these meetings, there was one of them that wasn't on their side, which means that they went back and told Trujillo of what was going on and put all of them to jail, put them all in jail. Well, with the pressure from the Catholic Church there, the churches there, they were able to release some of the people, and which was three of these women were one of them that was released, but their husbands were still incarcerated. About a couple of weeks later, they were still meeting even after they were incarcerated from the situation, and they went ahead and one night Trujillo decided that he wanted to cut their life short. So he followed them after they left, coming out from the jailhouse, and he made some people go to them and strangled them to death, and including the driver. This was on their way back, coming from the jailhouse, visiting their husbands, and took them to a mountain called La Cumbre, which is between Santiago and Puerto Plata, which is cities up north of Dominican Republic. So with that being said, he thought that after doing that, it was going to be over, he was going to be able to take over, but in actuality, it brought upon his assassination by the Dominican people, May 30th of 1961. So he was ruling them from 1930 until 1961. That was his death. So that's when the International Day Against Violence Towards Women approached, November 23rd of 1960. The resolution was declared that the sisters were known as the Unforgettable Butterflies. This was accepted in December 1999, a symbol of the crisis of violence against women in Latin America. So just to give you some visual again, this is a map, and those numbers that you see up there are the number of femicides that happened between January to June. I didn't get there until August, but just if you can just imagine, I was in Santo Domingo, which is the highest. 24 femicides that occurred during that span from January to June of 2012. So, exploring this, when I got there, wasn't too sure what I wanted to do, but I was, based on the information, the research I did on my own before I got there, I wanted to explore this. Is women's income and education positively correlated to the report of violence? Women's education and income, is it negatively correlated with the experience of violence? And is previous history of violence in the family or close friends is a risk factor of the experience of violence? So here's where my demographics. 45 women were in Santiago and Baní, which is another city in the Dominican Republic. 24 of them were violated, 21 were not. Here are their age range and their religion. Here's some more demographics. Ethnicity, 57.8% were Black Hispanics, and 6.7% were Black non-Hispanic, which means it can include Haitians that were there, and anyone who happened to cross over who was there at the time of my study. And as you can see, 17.8% were white Hispanics, 6.7% were non-Hispanics, 6.7% were other, and 4.4% didn't know. What was interesting about the ethnicity is that while I was passing out the surveys, there were many of them that were asking me, what does that mean? What does it mean to be Afro, Hispanic, or what does it mean to be from Eurocentric Hispanic. They didn't know that term is not familiar with them. That's not something they use while they don't identify themselves by Afro or Eurocentric. They're just Hispanic, and a lot of people think of Hispanic as just white, but no, there is a difference. So just wanted to share that with you guys. The location, 47.7% were from the rural area, and 52.3% were from an urban area. 52.2% had none, or at least up to secondary, which is middle school, high school, up to high school of education, and 47.8% were from university superior education. So here's their income. This is converted to US dollars. Of course, in the Dominican Republic, $1 here is 39 pesos overseas. So this was their income status. This is the income of them. I didn't ask family income or of their parents. This is their income, how much they bring to the table. There were 3 subscales that I used in this study to determine the high volume of violence that they experienced. I took the survey from Department of Women there, and they told me that I could not take I couldn't use their survey, but I can use their subscales from the survey, simply because their survey was created for women who come into the department to seek help, and it's a safe house, so that's what they use. The survey there, they use it to evaluate them to see how severe is their situation. So because of that, I was able to only receive 3 scales from their survey. A little more in depth about the surveys. There were 4 questions for sexual, 7 questions for psychological, and 10 questions for physical. They were asked, do you experience this one time, 2 times, one time, sometimes, or often? And also, you were able, women who said that they identified themselves as being a victim of domestic violence were the only ones who were able to answer these questions. So here was my results. I used correlation to determine if there was a positive correlation to the reported violence. So when I said the reported violence, I asked them, how often do these women go to the authority and tell them that they're being abused by their husband or their partner? So as you can see, income and education, there was no significance there, meaning that income and education does not determine anything as far as them reporting the violence to the authority. There's no relationship there. Women's education and income are negatively correlated with the experience of violence. So there was a couple of significance there. But then again, income had no relationship when it comes to experiencing the violence. But there was a significance with physical violence, sexual violence, and psychological violence. So what do these numbers mean? It just simply means that as education goes up, the violence, the experience of physical violence goes down. Same goes for sexual and psychological. As education goes up, the less sexual violence they're likely to experience. As education goes up for psychologicals, the less likely them to experience it. Again, this is not a cause and effect, this is just a relationship, determining that